There have been a lot of X-Men games, some were great and some were not so great, but there's one X-Men game that I constantly find myself coming back to, and the crazy thing about it is it's over 20 years old, and that's X-Men Legends. Despite how gaming has changed since then, I still think this game understood something about the X-Men better than most games ever have, because X-Men Legends wasn't just a game where you played as Wolverine or something, it wasn't just like a superhero beat 'em up, it actually made you feel like you were part of the X-Men, you could build a team, switch between characters, combine mutant abilities, explore the mansion, and talk to the other X-Men. It was basically like Marvel Ultimate Alliance, but X-Men version, and experience an original X-Men story that actually felt like a comic book brought to life. And yes, the game absolutely shows its age. The graphics are really dated, the combat is simplistic compared to modern games, and some of the mechanics could definitely use an upgrade. But here's the thing, even after all these years, the formula still works. And with the X-Men 97 bringing the franchise back into the spotlight, and even Insomniac's Wolverine arriving this year, I can't stop thinking about how badly we need another X-Men game like X-Men Legends. So today, let's talk about why X-Men Legends was the perfect X-Men game. But before we get into that, if you guys don't know me by now, I'm Mr. Frosty Flames, but you can call me Mike. We do anything gaming news, reviews, playthroughs, anything FGC related, anything superhero related, anything like that, period, just geek stuff. If you enjoy that style of content, be sure to hit that sub button and join the Mr. Frosty Flames Legion. Anyways, let's get back to the video. And to start off, I just want to say the biggest compliment I could give X-Men Legends is that it understood what made the X-Men special. The X-Men aren't just, one superhero, they're a team, and that's incredibly important. When you play as the X-Men, you're not stuck playing as Wolverine for 20 hours, you're not playing as Cyclops for 20 hours, not even Storm or anyone else. You build your own team. You decide who you want to bring with you. You get a mission, and then you could decide which X-Men fit best for this mission. Every character feels different. Wolverine could get up close, Cyclops attacks from range, Storm could control the battlefield with her weather, Iceman freezes enemies, and Jean Grey could manipulate enemies with her psychic abilities. And that's what makes this game so satisfying. You're not just picking your favorite characters and playing them over and over again. I mean, you could, but really you're just building an actual X-Men team. The roster still holds up today. It's incredible because it was packed. You had characters like Wolverine, Cyclops, Storm, Jean Grey, Beast, Rogue, Gambit, Nightcrawler, Iceman, Jubilee, Colossus, Magneto, and more. This is basically an X-Men fan's dream roster. And what's even better is that these characters aren't just like skins, reskins of each other. No, they play completely differently. They actually play the game, how they are meant to play. Like Nightcrawler has his teleportation powers, Rogue has her like powerhouse powers and she could absorb abilities, stuff like that. Magneto, he has magnetic powers. Colossus is like a tank. You know what I mean? Everyone is different, and that's something I think modern superhero games could learn from. Give me a huge roster, but make every character feel meaningful. That's what X-Men Legends did. And on top of all that, you have a team system that makes the game special because you could create combinations that actually feel like your X-Men team. Maybe you want Wolverine, Storm, Cyclops, and Jean Grey. Maybe you want an entire team of melee characters. Maybe you want to experiment with characters you've never used before. The game gives you that freedom, and because you could switch characters during gameplay at these like save points, you're constantly encouraged to experiment, especially how the game isn't really easy. So if your character takes damage or gets knocked out or something, you could switch them in and out, right? You're constantly encouraged to just try out new characters. It creates this feeling that you're controlling an entire superhero team rather than just like one character. You know how like the Guardians of the Galaxy game, that game was great. It was a really good game, really good story, but you could only play as Star-Lord, and that was a common complaint. Like some people wanted to play as like Gamora, Drax, Rocket, and Groot, and etc. The other characters, Adam Warlock, and that was a complaint. But however, X-Men Legends, you're not just playing as like the leader. You're not just playing as Cyclops and commanding the X-Men around. You're playing as each character, and honestly, that's exactly what I want from an X-Men game. It actually lets you also live in X-Mansion. Another thing that makes it special is between missions, you could explore X-Mansion. You could talk to characters. You could learn more about the lore and the world, and you could could actually interact with the whole X-Men team. And this might sound like a small thing, but it isn't, because the X Mansion is one of the most important locations in X-Men lore. And if you think about it, this is where they live, this is their home, this is their school, this is where they train, where they argue, where they become a family. And X-Men Legends lets you experience all of that. This game isn't just like mission, fight enemies, mission again, fight enemies. There's downtime, there's character interaction, there's world building, and that's what makes the X-Men feel like actual people. And the story feels like a comic book, and this is all of you for like the comic book fans, including me, because the X-Men Legends game doesn't try to recreate like a movie. It isn't simply just adapting one specific comic story or something. It creates its own X-Men story, and that gives the game so much freedom. You get the X-Men, you get the Brotherhood, the mutants, Sentinels, mysterious experiments, and plenty of classic X-Men conflicts. It feels like you're playing through like an X-Men comic, and that's probably the best way I could describe it. It's not trying to be realistic, it's trying to be X-Men original, you know? And that's exactly what I want from a game like this. But being honest, yeah, I'm not gonna exaggerate anymore. It has aged. This is a PS2 era game, and you could absolutely tell it's not gonna look like a modern AAA game. You know, the character models are dated. Some of the cutscenes, they look like pixels, like GTA 3 cutscenes or something. The environments are relatively simple. You know, the level design is relatively simple. The combat doesn't have the depth of, you know, modern action games. You know, some animations look pretty rough, and the camera could definitely fight you sometimes. If you're expecting like Spider-Man 2 level presentation, you're going to be disappointed. But I don't think that's the point, because the question isn't, you know, does X-Men Legends look modern? Absolutely not. It's an old game. The question is the underlying game still fun? And I think that answer is absolutely yes, because the formula still works. Because strip away the graphics, and you still have a formula that would work incredibly well today, like a large X-Men roster with unique abilities, team combinations, character progression, and an original story with, you know, tons of side content, co-op, and a whole X Mansion to explore, and a world filled with X-Men lore on top of that. You could take this exact foundation, give it modern graphics, modern combat, modern animations, modern voice acting even, and suddenly you have an incredible X-Men game. You wouldn't even need to reinvent it, you just need to modernize it. And I make this video because the timing couldn't be better, because the X-Men 97 TV show reminded everyone how much people still love these characters. The show became a massive critical success and brought the classic X-Men back into the spotlight. Even the MCU was bringing them in. It proved that you don't need to completely reinvent the X-Men. You just need to understand what makes them special. You know, the characters, their relationships, the drama, the humor, the action, the team dynamic. That's exactly what X-Men Legends understood, and that's exactly why I think a remake or remaster makes so much sense to me right now. Imagine X-Men Legends, but with just modern graphics, everything that I said, modernized combat, and the X-Men 97 momentum behind it. You know, that would be incredible. Even Insomniac's Wolverine. This brings me to something I'm really excited about, you know, the Wolverine game that's dropping on September 15th, you know. And from everything we've seen, this isn't going to be just another, you know, Spider-Man style superhero game. It's much more darker, more violent. It's rated M, and it's focused on Logan, and it already includes some of the characters from the X-Men universe like Jean Grey, Mystique, and Sabretooth. And that's exciting, but it also makes me think, what comes after Wolverine? Because if Insomniac eventually decides to make a full-on X-Men game, I really hope they take a look at X-Men Legends, not copy it, but just look at it and take maybe the idea behind it and bring it into the modern era. But you know, in the end of the day, is this game the best superhero game ever made? Probably not. You know, the graphics are old, the combat is simple, and some of the mechanics haven't aged perfectly, but really somehow the most important part still works. You know, the feeling of it, like you're part of the X-Men team, and that's something I don't think should ever be forgotten. And with X-Men 97 proving how much people still care about these characters, and Wolverine bringing the X-Men back into the gaming spotlight, I really hope someone looks at X-Men Legends and realizes, okay, maybe we should do this again. Not because the original was perfect, but because the formula was. And if someone took that formula and gave it a budget, technology, and the ambition of a modern AAA game, we could finally get that definitive X-Men game we've been waiting for so long. But I want to hear from you guys. Have you played X-Men Legends? And if you could, would you get a full modern remake of this game? Would you buy it? Would you pay like $60 for it or something? Or would you want it to completely reinvent the formula? Let me know in the comments down below. But if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to join the Mr. Frosty Flames Legion. Thank you guys for watching. Mr. Frosty Flames out. Yeah.